Hello and welcome to Mizzou Central's coverage of the 2024 NFL Draft. I'm Joey Van Zummeren. I cover Mizzou football for the site, and today I'm joined by a guest to talk about some of Mizzou's top draft prospects in April. Brian Maafi, who covers the NFL Draft for some various sites. Brian, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So this is going to be a great draft class for Mizzou. A lot more prominence than they've had in recent years, not only in the regular season for college football, but then now, this is what I wrote my article on this week, just kind of extending into the NFL, just another chance to get the program's name in front of faces. So great for the school. And also in that, there's probably going to be or potentially two first round draft picks, which would be the first time for the school since 2011 with Blaine Gabbert and Alden Smith both getting in the top 10 then. So if those two names don't tell you how long it's been, then there it is. But so the two guys are going to potentially go in there. Let's start off with those two, Darius Robinson and Ennis Rakestraw. Starting with Robinson, it was very interesting to see over these past few months how quickly he shot up draft boards because during the season, it was exciting to see him. This is definitely his best season of his career at Mizzou in 2023, making that switch to the edge. And it was exciting, but it didn't really even feel like until the Senior Bowl, his name was even being thrown around in the first round. It felt more like late day two, early day three type pick for Robinson. But now he had a great performance at the Senior Bowl. Really, I think what a lot of NFL teams are going to like is his versatility, can play both the edge and the interior, has plenty of experience at both. And I just think he is such a powerful player. And even if he doesn't have all the technical pass rushing things down yet now, I think he can really um, be a reliable contributor for a team early on. Brian, what are your thoughts on Darius?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. I the way I see him, even though I saw he was at the combine. He said he was 305 last year, and this year he dropped down to 285 to kind of play the edge.
Hmm.
I still think he's going to kind of end up being more playing an interior kind of D line type position. But I think you can still use him all over. You can even use him as like an edge, like an early down, the short down, yardage down, and slide him inside on pass rush downs.
Hmm.
I think probably whoever drafts him is probably going to ask him to pack on like 10 pounds maybe. Probably not back to 305, but probably like 295, something like that. But yeah, I think because he's got some explosion, he's an okay speed, but I think he's a better fit in interior. The guy I kind of compare him to a bit is Richard Seymour. I'm not saying he's gonna be as good as him, but
Hmm.
I think they could be similar type players.
How dependent do you think what role Robinson plays, how dependent do you think that will be on just kind of the scheme he's drafted to? Because in 4-3, he's probably edge, I would think. Um, but 3-4 probably interior. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, well, like I said, I think in 4-3 you play him on edge on like short yardage down and early downs, and then you kick him
Mm,
inside on third downs and pass downs. I think you can do if you do 3-4, you can do him as a five tech. I think not a lot of teams use that as much anymore, but like I think Pittsburgh still kind of uses that position. And I've heard Pittsburgh has some interest in him, so I think that would be a good fit for him if he's going to go to Pittsburgh and play that five tech.
yeah, very excited to see and watch Darius on draft night. He's talked a lot about just wanting to get that green room invite, which I don't think I've ever heard a draft prospect like mention specifically like their goal is to get draft invited to the draft. But it's a big moment for Darius. He grew up in Detroit, which is where the draft is going to be held. So looking forward to see where he ends up. Next up, still on defense, Ennis Rakestraw, who has been interesting guy to watch throughout this draft process too. Not as exciting for Darius, but has had some interesting results at both his combine and then his pro day on Friday.
Yeah.
First off, about the combine, I mean, one of the biggest talking points of the cornerbacks was his 4.540. And, a lot of teams with his lack of size are probably going to be looking more at his athleticism because that's what makes him so effective as a slot press corner. that even though he's not the biggest physical test for any receiver, he's just very feisty, aggressive, and so teams would probably be looking for some more of that athleticism. He did improve on his 40 time at his pro day. No official time given for Mizzou, but me and all of the other reporters there had him timed at 4.4, somewhere in that range. Brian, what are your thoughts on Ennis?
Yeah, I mean, his combine wasn't great, but of course he's coming off that injury and the surgery and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And he ran a 4.45 on a pretty fast track at Indianapolis, but he improved it, like you said, to a 4.4. So I think that helped him, and he has some decent testing. He's still not 100%, of course, but I think he can play inside. He can play outside. Like you said, he's a physical, aggressive press type corner. Um, I think Mizzou's defense kind of hurt him a little bit because they had him doing a lot of bail technique. I don't think that's really his strength. I think press, like you said, is his strength. So I think that kind of hurt his. I think it kind of hurt his production a little bit, but still,
Hmm.
I think he still has a chance, like I said, and because he improved his 40 times, so that shows he was back to himself and stuff like that. So, I think that's gonna help him, and it still could get drafted in the first round.
Yeah, where do you think he kind of stacks up with the rest of this cornerback class? Because I think this class particularly is very interesting around just the second half of that first round. Because probably got Terry on Arnold being the first one off the board. And then after that, it just I really think it's going to depend so much on what teams want out of the guys. It's not as easy, and I think this gets lost a lot of times in the pre-draft process, at least with the coverage of it. It's just thinking, you know, every every corner can be compared under the same qualifying traits or whatever. Like a team might think that Cooper DeJean will be better for their system. The Packers, for example, might want him for his versatility, might want him to play more at safety. A team that needs more of a slot corner might be looking at Rakestraw. The Packers are another team to watch with that as well. But yeah, I guess just kind of your thoughts on this cornerback class and where Ennis fits in there.
It's a really good class. It's strong at the top and it's pretty deep. It's probably one of the better classes in this draft. Kind of like you said, Arnold's probably going to be number one, and then after that, it kind of depends. I think what teams, um, what they want from their corners, because then you got to
Hmm.
kind of you guys in there like Wiggins and Mitchell, who probably competing for the number two corner spot, and then you got Kool Aid in there, and then like we said, you got Ray Straw. And then Eugene, depending on how teams see him, I think he's kind of more of a safety, but he can play slot as well. Um, but he's right in that area where Eugene is, like right after Arnold, after Kool Aid, after Wiggins, after Mitchell.
Moving out of the first tier of cornerbacks, also from Missouri, is Chris Abrams-Strain, who's looking at that late day two, early day three range. Impressive athlete. One of his best traits is just his fluidity in coverage. Doesn't get so locked in to anything. Has some impressive speed. Had a 4.44 40-yard dash at in an Indy. And then also will be praised for his versatility. Played both slot and outside for Missouri, mostly played outside this past season. But Brian, what are your thoughts on the other Missouri corner?
Yeah, like kind of like you said, he's less heralded than Rakestraw, probably because his upside's a little bit lower. He's an older guy. He's going to be 23 soon. But he's probably, because of his size and his frame and stuff, he's probably going to have to go move over to the slot in the NFL. But I mean, of course, as we know, a slot corner is basically a starter these days anyway. But he is a little undersized. Of course, he was just under 180 pounds at the combine. So that's gonna be a thing that's gonna some teams are gonna like, some teams are not gonna like. It just depends. Like kind of like we said, for example, for the Packers are probably not gonna. He's not gonna get on the board because
Hmm.
he's under 190 pounds or whatever. But yeah, like I said, I think he can be a solid slot corner. He probably is looking at like a end up getting picked in like the middle rounds, like fourth round, something like that, maybe fifth.
Gotcha. One last player in the Mizzou secondary, JC Carlisle, who I think will be really interesting to see where he gets taken. Um, he's such a interesting prospect, just because like he tested really well. Probably had the best combine day out of anybody from Mizzou. Had a 9.53 relative athletic score, 4.5 40-yard dash. So that was impressive, but like in play, he's not the most athletic guy. He doesn't play like it. He
Right.
lacks kind of that lateral quickness. And a lot of teams will probably project him as a linebacker. He did both safety and linebacker drills at the Mizzou Pro Day. So Brian, what do you think of JC? I'm not sure how much you've watched on him, but
Yeah, I've watched him. I actually have him as a linebacker. I think the NFL's sorry, I should reset. I think most teams are going to view him as a probably a linebacker, kind of like what
mhm,
because you said because he hasn't played that testing, and he's not great in coverage. He's a big dude. He's like almost 230. Like you said, ran a 4.5 and all that. But yeah, I think that's probably where his skills lie in the NFL is like a linebacker, like a nickelbacker or something like that.
mhm.
Maybe grow into like a full-time type backer or something like that if you can develop some. It's just going to be a position move, which is going to probably drop him a bit in draft stock wise.
Yeah. Onto an actual player that played linebacker at Mizzou. Tyron Hopper, um, also another athletic guy. He was dealing with his ankle injury at the combine, so didn't participate in some of the drills. But I mean, he is just kind of a Tasmanian devil on defense, or almost just like those like the Tops kids toys where you just spin them around and they just like go everywhere. And I'm not saying he's
Right.
uncoordinated or anything, but like he just has a lot of speed, especially can go sideline to sideline. But definitely needs to improve his vision. I'm not trying to reduce him into a kind of a mindless guy that just runs around everywhere and hope that he hits somebody, but um, definitely, especially in the run game, needs to get a little bit better at that. But Brian, what are your thoughts on Tyron?
Yeah, he's a kind of a little undersized linebacker. He was a transfer from Florida. He's like 6'1", 230. Oh, he put on a little bit of weight. He was 231. He kind of fits in that modern day NFL linebacker. But yeah, it's his vision. It's his being able to diagnose. He's literally in diagnosing and stuff like that. But I think because of his athleticism and stuff like that, I think you could still see him go being like a special teams ace type thing as a rookie, while he kind of learns and develops if he can improve and become maybe a starter down the line or something like that. And he
Mhm.
showed decent blitzing skills too. So at least he's got that going for him. He can blitz a little bit.
Yeah, I think Hopper was just kind of an example of how much the draft is just such a crapshoot to actually project any of these prospects on how they'll end up as NFL players because a lot of times in college you can win and be a good player by just being better athletically than everybody else. But then once you get into the NFL, you are going up against top end athletes week in and week out. So Hopper definitely represents that and will be interesting to watch progression of his career.
Yep.
Moving on to the offensive side of things, start off with Cody Schrader, the running back who obviously had a great season for Missouri, 2,100 yards, leading the SEC in rushing. A phenomenal story too. That's fun to clean on too. Started off his career at Division II, Truman State. I have quite a few of friends from high school that go there. Um, but I mean, just a bowling ball runner, really great downhill guy. The main
Yep.
thing is going to be his age. He is going to be 25 by the start of the NFL season, and I mean, it's different with him compared to other draft prospects that might have, could say waited out or dragged out their college career a little bit too long. Schrader played so much college football because he needed to. He would
Yep.
not have gotten drafted in a year before. But it's just going to be a tough thing for him because, I mean, you look at Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley, who were leading the charge last year as the guys campaigning for more secure long-term deals for running backs. But the Colts and the Giants, respectively, were kind of hesitant to give those out. Um, Taylor was 24 last NFL season, and Barkley was 25 or 26. The lifespan for running backs in the NFL is just so short. So it's going to be that's going to be a really hard thing for Schrader to get past for NFL teams to draft him. But I think he can make up for some of that with his character. He brings up his experience a lot. So I guess the main pitch for him would be to be a day one contributor with all the experience he has. And teams basically are going to have to pay him right away because he's going to be 28 by the end of his rookie contract. Brian, just your thoughts on Cody, his age, but also just him as a player.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the age is obviously an issue. The NFL doesn't like old running backs, especially ones that have um, what do you call it? Have much as much how many carries on their bodies, I should say.
Yeah.
Also, if I think an effect of running backs, every running back, at least this is to more my thinking is that every running back has a certain amount of carries in their body. And it's going to be different between running from one running back to another. But it's basically they're gonna have a certain number of carries, and once they get past that, they just start their body starts breaking down. They can't do it anymore.
Hmm.
So that's obviously going to be concern with teams. Of course, he didn't have a great 40. Of course, he doesn't play that fast either way. Anyway, he ran like a 4.6. So but he's got good vision. He's got pretty quick feet. Um, he just needs to improve as a receiver and show some better work with his hands and stuff. But of course, his size is going to be a bit of a detriment. Him being like 5'8.5", 202.
Hmm.
Um, it's it doesn't help.
No.
It's some teams gonna have to try and look past um, him being a smaller back, but not really like he's not super fast, he's not super quick, but he's got like I said, he got good vision though.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, he's shown flashes like, as a receiver at times, so that's just need developed. And then of course, pass pro, he needs to show he can do that because teams might see him as like a third down back type of thing.
Yeah.
So, but I think he can play in the league at least for a few. You could get through his at least his rookie contract at the very least.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, the receiving and pass protection would be really nice for him to be able to show that off. Well, I guess pre-draft process is mostly over by now, but if that's probably what teams are going to want to develop the most out of him, like you mentioned, for the role they see him playing. So, interested to see where Schrader goes and how his career turns out. Last one, I know you really like this guy, offensive tackle Javon Foster. 3-year starter for Mizzou, just an absolute anchor. His measurables are really great. 6'5", 313 pounds, and then 34-inch arms. Brian, I'll let you go on your praise for Javon here.
Yeah, he's kind of been one of my guys for the last couple of years. He's he started out. I believe as a freshman. I think he started at right tackle for a few games or something like that, and then he moved over to left tackle the last 3 years or 4 years or whatever it is. But yeah, he's this guy that's continued to improve every year. I think if I remember right, it was his 2021 season. I think he had a lot of issues, and then 2022 he was a lot better. Um, but yeah, he's been a really good left tackle. Like I said, he's got long arms, he's got a big body, he's got these strong, as they say, quote unquote, vice grip hands type of thing. Um, and I think his 40 wasn't great, so I think some teams may not like that. Specifically, like mentioned earlier, the Packers. But I still think he played left tackle in the NFL. I think because it's more about your agility. But he didn't really do the agility testing, so that's kind of a thing that's going to be teams are going to have to rely on as far as his film.
Yeah.
But he's obviously not an elite athlete, but he's still pretty good. He's pretty up there. I think at the very least, a team can take him and throw him in there at right tackle, and he'll be fine. Because he's a good run blocker. Like I said, he's a physical guy. And he played in he played a similar blocking scheme to the Packers. Zone blocking outside the zone, that stuff. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think he can go second day, possibly even second round. And you can drop him in there, and he could start as a rookie, I think.
Yeah, the agility and athleticism that you mentioned, I mean, it was a 5.3 40. Um, and yeah, I think especially for a tackle, you do want that at least downfield blocking. But he did, as you mentioned, kind of show that off on tape, that he's not a track runner. Nobody's confusing him for that. But I do think, Mizzou ran, like you mentioned, they ran a lot of wide zone blocking, and he did show off a lot of agility there, and was able to block kind of off balance and able to push guys around, open up some lanes for Schrader. So I definitely think that will be a big pitch a big part of his pitch that he has a ton of experience with wide zone blocking. There was a sign in the Mizzou facilities that's something like we live and die by wide zone. So not I'm paraphrasing there, but it's as dramatic as that. Eli Drinkwitz loves that stuff. But I think so. We got prospects talk on hand today. It'll be interesting to watch. I'm sure they'll have a few more guys that go get signed as undrafted free agents. Realus George has been somebody, the defense tackle, who's been kind of getting some traction over the past few days after pro day. Obviously, you have Harrison Mevis, who will probably be drafted. So good draft class for Mizzou. Brian, any closing thoughts you want to mention?
No, it's kind of like you said, a good draft class. There's and then, but I think even next year looks like it's a decent class because a couple of those offensive linemen went back and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I think you've mentioned it before, but I don't forget his name, the linebacker Chad Bailey.
Yes.
um, but it looks like he didn't work out at the pro day. Um, but I
Correct.
think
Yeah.
I think he still has a chance to get drafted. Probably late day three, of course. But I think he shows some potential this year, especially this year. So he could be a guy to keep an eye on that if he gets completely healthy and everything. He could be a guy to keep eye on for the NFL.
Yeah, he had a really good few seasons before he got injured, and then it was just really bad timing for him to be have that core or I believe it was the abdomen injury or
Yep.
abdominal injury right before the start of the season. They tried to play him, or he tried to play with it for the first few weeks, and they just eventually shut him down for the remainder of the season. But yeah, he's definitely been a name that's kind of been forgotten about in all of this just because he wasn't a factor last season with that injury. And hopefully um, that, I mean, like you mentioned, didn't work out the pro day, but hopefully it would be healthy in time for training camp, whether he goes drafted or undrafted. But I think that's all we have for you, Brian. Thank you for joining us today and tell the people where they can find your stuff at.
You can always find me, of course, on Twitter at BMaafi, BMAAFI, and then basically just the Cheesehead TV draft guide. I'm writing for that this year. I did the interior D line, and then I also did a feature article for that. I also write for ATBnetwork.com, and then also I have a also doing a podcast for Cheesehead TV. We're breaking down the different positions, kind of more Packers specific, but we do talk about other players as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it, at least for
All
now.
right. Yeah, great stuff. We appreciate you tuning into this video. Make sure you stay tuned to Mizzou Central for the rest of the coverage throughout the NFL draft and past that as well.